The list of ways that our government continues to violate our civil liberties is long. I'm going to go over just a couple of them before we get to our conversation with a really special guest. Recent legislation that was enacted requires banks to report to the IRS when someone transfers more than $600 to another person using an app like Venmo or the Cash App. Why does the IRS need to know this? When supposedly they're focusing their limited resources and their new $79 billion bill and the 89,000 new IRS agents that they're hiring on targeting the wealthiest of Americans who are exploiting tax loopholes to avoid paying taxes on all their money. No one can be faulted for not trusting the IRS, especially after during the Obama administration, they specifically targeted conservative organizations that had the word patriot in their name. One of the most egregious violations of due process is another thing that is very, very rarely focused on, but is happening across the country on any given day. And that is the corrupt system of civil asset forfeiture. This is when the government takes it upon themselves to come and seize the property from law-abiding Americans who have not even been charged with the crime and may never be charged with a crime. One story I'll share with you, unfortunately there are many, but one in particular has to do with a young man pursuing a career in the music industry. A guy named Joseph Rivers, 22 years old. He bought a one-way train ticket to Los Angeles and had some money saved up that he took with him to get his life started there. Well, for the DEA agents who confronted him, that act alone, along with the fact that he was traveling with what they viewed was a large amount of cash, was suspect enough to assume that this young man was engaged in some kind of drug trafficking or narcotic activity. Now, other passengers on that Amtrak train noted that Rivers, who's a young African-American man, he was the only passenger on that train to be singled out by the DEA. Rivers' attorney said Rivers' race likely played a role in that, as he was the only black passenger on his section of the train. But during this search and seizure of the cash that Rivers was carrying with him as he was going to start out a new life, he said he cooperated throughout the entire time, telling the DEA, hey, call my mom, and she'll tell you that I am who I say I am and that I'm doing what I say I'm doing. And as the agents took his money, he asked them, how am I going to survive? If you take away my money, I'm not even going to be able to go home. And according to Rivers, the DEA agents, he says, quote, informed me that it was my responsibility to figure it out. Rivers was never charged with any crime, and there's no indication that he ever will be. But the DEA was still legally allowed to seize the $16,000 in cash that he carried, giving an explanation saying, well, we don't have to prove that the person is guilty. It's that the money is presumed to be guilty. This happens more often than we realize. And in most cases, unless a person has the resources, the time, and the energy to sue the law enforcement agency and sue the government to get their property back, that property is never returned. And too often law enforcement agencies take advantage of this civil asset forfeiture law as a means of funding, of bringing more resources to their department. Another example we've seen most recently, Senator Elizabeth Warren has demanded that credit card companies keep track of any and all firearm ammunition related purchases. That those purchases, when you go into Dick's Sporting Goods or, I don't know, some other establishment and you buy some ammunition, well, Elizabeth Warren wants that to be annotated and coded separately from anything else you might purchase in there and potentially marked and reported for suspicious activity. This is a direct violation of our privacy. So through these examples and more, we can see how dangerous it is when we have people in power who have no respect for the Constitution and who have taken an oath to support and defend the Constitution, but don't take it seriously, and worse yet, reject it.